Hey, friend. So glad you're here. Welcome to Real Talks with Joe. I have the incredible honor of talking, not interviewing, but really having a conversation with not only a client of mine, but also someone who's become a dear friend of mine. Um, Emily and her husband James have been in coaching with me for a couple of years now, and I just wanted to let you all just hear from people that are doing the work. It's easy for me to just simply share what I know or share experiences or talk about those situations, and so I really wanted to give you all an opportunity to hear it from somebody who's done there, who's been there, done that, and is still growing in their own marriage and as they grow individually through this whole process. So I hope I don't do much talking during this conversation. I hope you guys get to fall in love and hear Em and hear her story and hear how she showed up and what she took away and what she's growing in. And while her husband James isn't in this conversation, he actually is part of this process because he's the guy behind the camera helping us to have this conversation. So he's very much involved in this process. But for this conversation, I really just wanted you all to hear from somebody who's in it. And so with that, Em, welcome. Thank you for being here. So thankful for you. I would love if you shared what was going on like in your guys' marriage before we really started the coaching process. Like what was like reality really looking like for you and James, like as a daily rhythm? Like what was that like?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on here. This is so fun. I think for us, like we started out as wedding photographers. We work in business together, and working with your spouse is always a little difficult sometimes. But really, we've been married for, it'll actually be 7 years this month. And the first 5 years before we did coaching, we really struggled with Ugh, I have to admit some things. I wanted to be right all the time. I knew what was best. I knew, I had my task that I wanted to accomplish. I was very goal oriented and like, I need to accomplish this, this, and this in order to feel like I've done something.
Like very type A,
And
it sounds like.
yes, very type
Got it.
A, Enneagram 3, a wing 2. So I love to help other people. But I also knew the best way to do something. And it was kind of my way or the highway. And if you knew me or still kind of know me, I am a little more, I would say, outgoing with like my personality and like my just rightness, if that makes sense. So when James and I were to like first married, he was very lax. He would focus more on the fun rather than the work. And so for me, I would see him as being lazy, not productive, that he didn't really care. He was just kind of floating through life, and wherever we went was wherever we went. And for me, I needed to know we're at point A, here's how we get to point Z, and here's all the steps in between. And he was just, in my mind, like, oh, if we go here, we go here. And it really just annoyed me. Like I didn't understand that concept, I guess, of, thinking through things and really just not caring. Like that's just not in my system up until now.
Yeah. And whenever you're talking about like that laziness that you experienced from James, how did you communicate that? Like, how did you even deal with that stuff? Like, how would that show up in your guys? Did it show up in your conversation? Because obviously it was a thought, like you're being lazy, but like, how did you react? How did you handle it? What did you do in that moment?
Oh, well, I was told by some friends and family that I would wear the pants in the relationship. Some would call me his mom,
Hmm.
because I would just bark orders at him. And if it didn't get done, then we'd have a heated discussion. And I wouldn't want to talk about it until I was ready. And it was just like I was raising him and I was in charge of him. So basically, I I felt like I had all the pressure to do all the things because I was the only one who had a plan.
Mm.
And for the first, especially 2 to 3 years of our marriage, we had so many fights, the same fights of typical, like, you didn't take the trash out again. Guess it's my turn again. Like, just these little, um, I am really good at coming up with like these one line zingers, like just cut to the throat. Um, and I would not hold back. I would, say things I would very much regret later. And of course, we would, make up and it'd be fine. But there was always that intense, like, bitterness and anger and just really frustration of like, I felt trapped and I'm claustrophobic. So, of course, when I feel trapped, I don't want to be trapped anymore. So I go to anger and yelling. And to him, it was just me nagging and being his mom. And he's a grown man. I don't need a mom anymore. Like, that was our life, is just fighting pretty much, though. It sounds terrible, but like most of the first 3 years, that's how it was.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, even in that time, I mean, you guys are still fairly newlyweds, even though you guys had known each other for a while. Um, for you, M, like, what even then allowed for even conversations of like, there has to be something else available. Like, I
Mm.
can't just be his mom, because that's a pretty significant identity change of like, I'm just gonna have to bark orders. I'm gonna have to tell him what to do. He's gonna listen. And if he doesn't, we're just gonna kind of force the square into the peg hole and make it work so that we can just, sounds like, survive, really. Not, there's no thriving in that, but yeah, what even started, what was the seed that made you go, or even maybe James go, like, something has to, something can be different. We just don't know what.
Well, I think for us, even though we are very different, we have qualities that really mesh well. And we really do love each other. We're very different people, but we love each other. And honestly, divorce was never an option for us.
Mm.
Um, and we're in it till the end. And we knew something had to change because, I mean, gosh, I can't believe I'm admitting this. I mean, it got to the point where I was threatening to just, we live in Lynchburg. We're from Roanoke, which is about an hour drive. And I would actually just say, like, all right, if we keep this up, if you don't change, then I'm just going to go back to mom and dad's house and you can, change on your own time. And I'll be back when you do change. Like,
Mm.
we didn't like where that was going in our marriage. Like, that's going nowhere good. And we didn't want that. We just decided, like, what, what could our future look like if if he would just not be lazy? What could our future look like in the business? We were working full-time jobs while, running the side hustle. So our life was chaos, and so was our marriage. But, we didn't want that. Like, we knew that wasn't sustainable. So there was just this point of, something's got to give. Like, you need to change, and I will just say I'm sorry more often. That's kind of where we were at, is like, I'll forgive you for being lazy. Now it's your turn to actually do some work.
Mm.
So,
Wow. Yeah. And in that, I mean, friends, if you are hearing this, like, you can feel the heaviness. I'm sure every marriage experiences this type of dynamic where, I mean, some toleration going on, there's some enabling going on, there's some manipulating going on, there's some bitterness being built up in the process. There's so much happening. All the while, life is still, quote unquote, good. I mean, tell me, whenever people ask you, like, hey, how are you doing during those days? Tell me if I'm wrong, but your answer was probably like, oh, we're great. Everything's fine. Is that a safe assessment? Like, in the
yeah,
general day to day?
I would actually sometimes even avoid the whole marriage. Like, oh, how are you with James? I would go, great. Our business is doing great. We booked 10 weddings next year. I would go straight to something that was actually working,
Mm-hmm.
but wasn't working all the way. So I would say I would answer it, but then very sneakily immediately go into the thing that was actually good.
Oh, yeah. Totally human. Friend, like that. Guys, this is what we are. If you can't relate to this, I don't know if you've lived very long, because honestly, it's human nature. I mean, it goes back to what you just said. Like, I want to look good. I want to like be in control of things. So how can I control other people in that same light? I present to you a story, a reality, which may have some like absolute truth to it. Like the business was growing. There was facts that could prove what you were saying. So there was some authenticity. It was also
Mhm.
just a very human fabrication of reality in some ways too, not needing to air your dirty laundry across the world kind of thing. But yeah, the controlling that was in the marriage was also now being applied to the rest of the world as well. Something to note there, which, like I said, totally human. And as you think about that, like that stage of life, obviously we met at a conference and had a really awesome like interaction, just serving together. Both of us were just volunteering. You guys just jumped right in and helped out with my sister-in-law's conference, Caitlin James, and it was just really fun getting to know you. But I mean, at that time, like, did you guys have any conversations about a life coach like that season? Like, I mean, really, like, you've been married a couple years, life is good, business is growing. Forget the fact that my husband's a lazy bum, or that's what I make up about him. Like, yeah, I mean, seriously, was like the life coach thing? Yeah, was that even on the table?
Oh man. So I I knew that something had to, like, someone else, like a third party, but not like our family. Like we couldn't have anyone like take sides, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
We needed someone, but I had no idea what that even looked like. And then at Caitlin's event, where we met you, we got to watch a live coaching session with Caitlin, Michael, and their coach. And honestly, gosh, this is terrible. I saw all that happened, and like she was talking just to Michael and Caitlin wasn't really saying anything. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm totally like Caitlin. I need coaching because this coach is taking Michael like to church and like learning all these things. And I'm like, I need that for James. Someone needs to come in here and tell him what to do. Like that was literally after the coaching, like session or whatever on stage and it ended, I immediately turned to him and I whispered, because we were at a table with other photographers. I was like, we're doing that. We're going to look into it. Like, we are literally going to look into it. He was not excited at all, like, at all. And in fact, he said, I don't even know if I would want to, like, open up all of our drama to someone else. I would really have to meet them because counseling, life coach, like all those terms kind of have like a hippy dippy, like, oh, how do you feel about that? We didn't want someone that was just listening and then like, oh, let's try this option. Like we didn't want that. We wanted something real. And James wanted to know that like the person was not only qualified for like what they were sharing and like coaching us through, but like that he would mesh well personality wise. And God just works in mysterious ways. And who would he help take? I can't even remember what y'all were carrying to one of the cars, but he
Just a
helped
bunch of
you
stuff.
carry something.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember that very, very fondly. And it's amazing. You're exactly right. Like how God does cross paths at just the right time, right? Like we have talked since beginning coaching how really it was just a God thing that you all would interact with somebody who was happened to be a third party person to care for couples and care for marriages in a way that just serves them. And I mean, for you, whenever you did start the coaching process, what occurred to you? Because it sounds like you had an agenda going into it. Like
Oh,
somebody's
yeah.
going to church. My hubby's going to be the one doing this and doing it right because he's been sinning for a long, long time. What happened on that? Like, what happened over those first couple calls for you? Like, what ended up happening for you in that?
Oh, well, I'll steal a quote from you. Surprise, surprise. I was the one with the problems. And let me tell you, when you open my eyes to all of the things that I have maybe deep down knew and like recognized, but I like just I kept it back there. Like it was back there, I knew it was there, but like I controlled it, I knew where it was. Um you open my eyes to, instead of, looking at all that he's doing wrong, it's actually a problem with myself. Like I learned so much in like the first two calls with you on just like, wow, it's not really James, it's me. And like my mind was just like, am I the one that's been causing all of this in the past 5 years of our marriage? Like, I thought it was him, it was me. And it was just like honestly mind blowing. I get chills thinking about like that that moment of like it clicked in my head, like, oh wow, like I've been hiding so much, and I didn't know how to unearth it, honestly. I didn't know
Yeah.
it was there to begin with necessarily, to that extent, I guess. And then I didn't know how to unearth it. So,
Yeah. It really is whenever you can step into that place of just seeing your contribution to it. There's a like that's what we're up to in a lot of these calls is seeing how each person has contributed to whatever the circumstances are because they're in marriage there are two parties. Even if one has totally dropped the ball and one has legitimately done something completely wrong and hurt the other person, understanding the contribution, even if it's a 0.0001% understanding, takes work. Like, not only do you discover it, but then you got to figure this stuff out. Now, and like, now what? Oh, great. Aha. Woohoo. Yeah. And whenever you think about like that contribution, what was the contributions that you were, you know, putting forth in to gain these results in your marriage? What was your part in it that you can kind of look back on and go, man, I was blaming him, but now this is exactly how I contributed to the results I have in my marriage where there's bitterness, there's resentment, there's falsifying information, justifying ways of loving each other. Yeah, like what was that contribution from your end that you'd feel comfortable sharing with us?
the first thing that comes to my mind is really just I knew like deep down, I knew that I was frustrated that I wasn't charging, what I'm charging now. Like I was a cheap photographer in my area. I wasn't booking like I wanted to. I wasn't hitting my goals. So I would focus in on other things like the kitchen needs to be cleaned tonight and the trash needs to be taken out. And instead of focusing on projects in my business that were intimidating and maybe I didn't quite know how to do it correctly or make it perfect, I would just ignore it and hyper focus on cleaning my house. But James isn't helping me. He's just sitting there. Like, and I would put all that energy into fussing about, the grass hasn't been cut. Well, is that really what I'm angry about? Or is it because I'm not doing something that I know I should be doing? But all of it's happening deep down. So for me, I guess I would just put all of the pressure I was putting on myself. Like it was self inflicted pressure. And I was putting it on him in very non important ways. Like it didn't really matter if the grass got cut tonight or tomorrow. It's not really going to matter. But I made it matter. And then I knew, oh, this is so bad. I knew what buttons to press to get him angry. I had these one liners memorized and I would shoot them out one after one and it would just escalate and escalate. And then I wouldn't have to do any of those things I was nervous about doing or not fully like capable of doing it to my perfect standards because we were fighting and we need to focus on fixing our marriage that's more important than doing, the things that I'm avoiding. And
Yeah.
that's terrible. But
It's perfectly human. I mean, if what we don't transform ourselves, we transmit to the world. Our partner is not an exemption to that. And even bringing that level of, I shouldn't be doing this. He should be. And so now we've invited that language of shame that we've talked about into the equation. So all the like this avoidance is a really going on of like, I don't want to do these tasks, or I'm not reaching these goals. I'm not living into my vision for this business. And so if I'm not transforming this thing, so what am I going to do now? Well, transform what I can control, the trash being taken out. And friend, friends, as you're listening to this, like, even notice the language. No bad. There's no judgment here. Trust me. Everything that we do in the coaching experience is calling forth freedom, not condemnation, not shame. Okay. You can own your junk and own your contributions and still walk in a level of freedom. Okay. That's why coaching is a resource. If you want, guilt tripping or shaming, go somewhere else. But in these conversations, you're seeing what we're actually fighting through because we know what we're going for. Because for you, in that space, you knew what you wanted in the business. You also knew what you wanted for yourself, which was a level of a lifestyle, a connection, like of intimacy, of connection with not just James, but even with yourself. That was just longing in a very human way that we were created for. And whenever it's not there, we will fight like hell to survive and do whatever it takes to experience some connection, even if that means fighting or going at each other or holding some level of resentment. Like, totally human. It makes sense, all that to say. It really, really does. I appreciate you sharing that, honestly, Em. Like, that level of vulnerability of, I am curious. Do you remember any of those one-liners that you would send across the
uh,
table?
as you say that, they've all escaped me. Let me. Oh, and this people might give me a hard time, but I would basically he would play his Xbox all the time,
Mm.
and I would put that on a pedestal. And gosh, this is terrible. I would say, if you don't do this and this and this, and if it's not done basically to my liking, I'll take your Xbox cords, or I'll take your Xbox out and like destroy it, because that's what's more precious than our marriage. Or like, literally, I mean, there's some daggers, man.
Yeah.
And I'm sure James would probably remember the other really bad ones, um, but that's one that just came to my mind.
Yeah. I had to ask. I know some people were probably thinking it, so I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Oh yeah, there's some doozies, but the I did give him a hard time about the Xbox for a long time.
Probably rightfully so. No, I'm kidding.
Well,
Even for you, as you like realize like your contribution, and then started to then realizing, okay, now what? Right, you're seeing what you've contributed to the relationship. Now that we're actually connecting with reality and everything like that, what were the kind of like, what started changing? What were the things that you started implementing? What were the things that you got clear on to simply allow for the transformation? Because it's gonna be really cool to hear where you guys are now. um, because yeah, everyone here is going to be able to hear what all these little steps, these little things did to now allow you guys to do bigger, grander things that are truly a miracle and an amazing just contribution to the world as it is to your home. So, what were the steps that you found allowed for growth to actually take place?
I think for me, I would have to. I probably have to say I'd have to get clear. Or I got clear on, like, who I wanted to be, and could I actually be myself with James? Could I trust him enough? Could I be, vulnerable enough to share with him, like, hey, I'm not perfect and I'm not doing this. Can you help me? Instead of, barking orders, I tried to like get down to like, what is my emotion? Why am I feeling that way? And, you know, living into me being vulnerable, me not like admitting that I'm not perfect, um, and being like completely vulnerable and just open and trustworthy for James. I kind of like brought him, it's almost, and it's so dumb, but like all I could think of is like he opened like a door and went in deeper into our marriage.
Mm.
And like he crossed a barrier that I had honestly never let anyone cross. Um, like not even my parents sometimes. And for me, that was really hard, but there's a lot of freedom in that. And just for me, like we still have fights. We still go through different things. Like we have a real life marriage. But for me, whenever I have like this moment, we made a request of each other to, whenever we do have a fight, we separate, just give each other a minute to cool down. But then during my cool down process, I think about like, well, what was my underlying emotion? Am I angry? What am I angry about? Oh, it's because I haven't finished my bridal guide update. Well, maybe I could ask him to help me finish that, and then we can also tackle whatever I was fussing about, like taking the trash out. Like, I'll get over that.
Hypothetically
But
speaking, of course.
yeah. So, like I think just getting clear on, you know, trusting him, being vulnerable to not be perfect all the time. And, it's okay not to be okay. And I don't like saying that, but just admitting that you're not perfect, it's hard because I've just, most of my life I've always looked for goals and achievement, and like that's how I am successful. But really it's has nothing to do with that. It's, I'm human. It's okay to have these feelings. It's okay that I'm not perfect. It's okay that this didn't get done. I need to let James know, like, hey, I'm really struggling with this. Can you help me with this? And just talking through it, but also waiting until I was calm and like out of that like intense emotion there at the beginning.
Yeah.
That was also a big factor in like just letting me cool down. And I had to be really intentional on like, why am I angry? And I would literally just in my head, I wouldn't talk out loud, that's weird, but I would just be like, why am I angry? Okay. And then just work through like some questions that honestly you would ask during coaching. I have like a list of some questions to ask myself, Joeisms, if you will. And I would just be like, what would Joe say? And I would work through it. And that would help me get to just this mental point of like, all right, can we talk? Because we just have to work through this, and I want to share why I'm upset. Like, what's the real reason? And we go from there.
Yeah. And it's an amazing reality. Like whenever you said he started showing up differently in the process as you were implementing this vulnerability, this stance for openness and transparency, which does come with a level of risk. I mean, he's a free human being to respond however way he decides to. He could use it to wage war against you. He could use it to manipulate you. He could, I mean, these are things that people, marriages specifically, happen. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sharing with you my heart, and comes back at you. And for you to be willing to take that stand in light of the risk, it's truly a
Sorry.
like gift. I mean, so, and it, and in some ways, it's also proof that whenever you do take that risk, the payback and the return, such as James's way of showing up in that, are way more than you could have ever imagined. It makes the risk not seem so scary anymore because you look at the other side of what's possible and go, "Oh my gosh, I couldn't even envision this." Uh,
Right.
Reward is not the right word, but experience, connection,
Freedom.
free. Yeah,
Yeah.
great word. So, Em, as you guys stepped in this new level of freedom with each other, as you lived in vision, as James also decided to live in his vision, because in this process you both made the decision to have two visions. Like you had your stance, James had his stance. Moving forward, it brought forth opportunity, which then led to some decision making. Uh, Share with us like what those decisions were. What were the things that you guys were processing? What are the opportunities that you're wrestling with that actually made things possible to be where you are today?
So for us, we really just kind of sat down, and when we had original plans when we first got married of like what we wanted our life to look like, and we kind of reconnected and pretty much just like what do we want our life to look like? Did the future involve kids? What about our business? Like what could we do now together to achieve these different things that we wanted in life? And part of that is you have to have a strong base for your marriage. And that's, I don't want to say like communication, but like really learning, like, not like our triggers, but like if I'm getting angry in a conversation, instead of him like combating me of like, why are you upset? Or, these snarky little lines, it's like, hey, let's just take a breather and let's talk about it. Like, what's going on? Like, what's the underlying problem? And it's almost like we don't look for each other to be wrong anymore. Like we don't look at each other as not like enemies, but like we're working towards the same goal. So, what's going on that I should be a part of, that we're a team. We have to work together to be a team to get to achieving all that we want in this life. So, we just, instead of like defending our rightness, and for me to always think he's lazy or like, hey, you're taking the night off. Like, you deserve the night off. We've been working hard. And we've been communicating more. And basically, all I can just say is we've just been paying attention to each other and being very intentional on not seeing each other as the bad guy or the lazy one or the person who never stops working. You should take a break, Emily. We don't do that much anymore. We encourage each other and help each other so that we both can relax and have that time.
Mm.
But we also get things done and we're achieving things together, but we're not, at each other's throats.
I think for you guys to really be able to change your belief system about the other person, that's what you're talking about. You're rewiring something that's been there for a long, long time, and that's what is required in transforming marriages or any relationship, really, for that matter. Because there were ways of seeing yourselves individually that you held to be true. I had to be James's mom. That meant that I have to show up this way. So there's a level of performance and expectations and everything else. And so to then start the rewire of I'm vulnerable, I'm honest, I'm open. He is my partner, not my son. I mean, that is a completely different shift that calls forth the results that you're exactly talking about. Where if you do need a break, great, rock on, have a break. Or if we both need a chill night, great, we can both do that. There's no condemnation here. Or if we need to make the request that we kind of need to persevere and suck it up and go for it and do it, we can do it from a place of like calling upness and not calling down and shaming or blaming the other person, but simply encouraging and spurring one another on, which changes everything when you think about the results. So powerful. Yeah. And what would you say? Yeah. So then what has life looked like? What decisions have you guys made? And like, where are you guys today because of some of this rewire, these new ways of being, this new way of connecting, this new way of just, intentionality in your guys' marriage? Yeah, what family decisions have been made to live it out together and enjoy this life that you have together, frankly?
Yeah, because we got clear on, you know, like really like our purpose, like purpose in marriage, purpose with our businesses, and just our families, like how we want to stand up for them, just living out, hard situations. We decided who we wanted to be, And it led to, I mean, if you had told Emily, 5 years ago that I am now a year and 2 months since I quit my 9 to 5, I'm just a wedding, like, I don't mean just wedding photographer, I do a lot, but I am a wedding photographer full time. Like, I get to do this with my husband, and we haven't shared it technically yet. But as of yesterday, recording this podcast, I guess, um, James actually quit his 9 to 5 and is working his business, which is not even the same as like wedding photography, but we're helping small businesses with online courses, filming content for businesses, photo, video marketing, stuff like that. So because we are living into what I believe is our God given purpose for our marriage, for our businesses, everything, because we're actually living into it now and we're not scared. We're, both very much in this mindset of like, we're just going for it. And if we fall, we're going to fall together and we'll pick each other up, because of that. It's wild, but we both work for ourselves now. And, Joe, we may have to have future calls about working in the same room with your spouse because I feel like
We
we're
can go
pulling
there.
on some more interesting conversations with that. But it's insane to know that we can pay our mortgage and all of our bills and travel and live the life that we never, like, we thought it was years away, just even right before like the year 2020. I thought it was like 5 to 10 years away from working full time in the business and James joining me. And, I had goals to be like, the photographers I've been learning from, but I thought it was years from that. And here we are, just 2 years later, just going through coaching and really just working. It takes work. It's not just like showing up and you fix it. We have to do the work. But because of that, we're seeing, like, I'm just getting chills. I'm not going to cry, but I just, God works in such weird ways. And just to see all that we've accomplished now, it's just, I can't even think of words to say. It's amazing. And I'm so grateful,
Mm.
honestly.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Whenever you said you had chills, I literally felt the same way on my end, just because you're right. None of it was an accident. None of it just fell into your guys' lap. You guys have done the work. You're doing the work to continue these amazing results that are legitimately transforming your family, transforming the way that you serve people. I can Friends, if you're listening to this, you're listening to somebody who doesn't know any of this technology that he's working with. Okay, it's because of James and his talents and skill sets and his care, and M's skill sets and talents and care, that I'm even able to even talk to you with some credibility and some clarity. Okay, like, it's truly, they're not just sharing it with, I know that you're saying how grateful you are, but it goes both ways. Like, this is a contribution to my business and to my family and to clients who I haven't even started working with, but I pray do get to work with. And so it's amazing what ends up happening whenever we start living in vision together and actually living into our commitments together, because it calls forth a level of blessings and freedom that are so not just in our own homes, but are really beyond our homes, and they're in our communities, they're in our extended families, because it can't just be kept into a small box. It doesn't stay contained like that. It always
Right.
overflows. It really does. And it doesn't downplay the hardness and the difficulties and the scaredness and all that stuff, but it truly allows for a celebration and a blessing that is just next level. So, and what would you say to somebody who, if you were sitting across the table with a couple who uh, was where you guys were, what would you tell them that you wish somebody had maybe told you while you were sitting down with them?
So if I'm talking to someone that's in their dark days currently, that's what we call the first couple years of marriage is our dark days. Um, I would just say, like, what do you want your life to look like? What are you wanting to be? Like, who are you wanting to be? Do you like who you are right now? Do you like how things are working? Because what if you lived into your purpose? And what if, like, you both lived into your purpose, found the purpose of your marriage, and, like, found joy in your marriage, not just like anxiety and I don't say depression, but like frustration? Like,
Mhm.
what if there was another way to live life? So, the second thing I would say would be try to like hone in on like what is actually going on. Are you guys like if you're fighting over again, I'm just like overusing the taking the trash out, but I promise like it's really not that big a deal to me. um, are you fighting over whose turn is it to carry the trash out? Or is there actually something else going on? Maybe you don't want to admit it to yourself, like be vulnerable to yourself, which, then leads into can you be vulnerable with them? Like, are you fighting about the same thing? And maybe just kind of getting clear, like, have your emotions. It's fine to be human, to be in the moment. But then, just have like this time of like almost like self reflection of like, okay, why am I upset right now? Like, I get the harsh tones. Like, have I been working behind a computer all day and my head hurts because, I've been working behind the screen and my project's still not done? Like, is that really what I'm angry about? And then I can go to James later and say, like, you know what? I'm really sorry. I was angry, one, that the trash was still there. But really, what was going on is I'm really frustrated. The bridal guide's not done. I really want to finish this and get all the pictures put in, but I'm second guessing things because I want it to be perfect. And that's what's really going on because I'm not confident enough in myself. I'm not I'm living into my perfectionistic personality again, and the perfectionist type A personality in me is showing itself again. And James knows you know how to work through that with me now because we talk about it, and he can come in and he can do his thing even though it's not how I would do it, but he teaches me, and I at least know, like, all right, I'm not upset at him. He's not lazy. It's not that the trash is only his job and he's not being lazy. I'm just aggravated that I'm not perfect yet again. And he can walk through that with me. And by the way, he normally does take the trash out. And, we go about the rest of our evening just fine. So, 5 years ago, Emily and James would have been like at each other's throats. I may have even like locked myself in a room, told him to leave me alone for the night, and the trash would have been left in the can. But now we have our little jabs and then we stop. We get down to the bottom of like, what are we actually fighting about? And then we are vulnerable with each other. I'm like, what's actually going on? Oh, you're nervous because, the 2 inquiries you got this week for next year ghosted you. Let's talk about it. And, you address real life problems that it is a very real thing, especially now that I'm full time and getting ghosted by two people recently. It's hard to like live into that like potential fear for the future. But then you handle it together as a team, and you figure out like what is the underlying problem.
And thank you for sharing that. Seriously, like walking through this world that can always include chaos and call forth peace in your relationship and really in your hearts. I mean, I get goosebumps just talking about that because it's just not the normal conversation that's happening. And you guys, it's in rhythm in your home. After much work, after much effort, after much failure, you guys
Yes.
are creating that normal rhythm into your day to day so that you can handle another inquiry or not. Just be with what is so you can be with each other. This is awesome. And uh, if you're listening to this, I would sincerely hope that you can relate to James and Emily's story, because James and Em are a powerful couple who have done the work, and they also are perfectly human. And so I hope that you will take away from this conversation what needs to be taken away for your relationship. Not to compare yourself to James and Emily, because you're not James, you're definitely not Em. And so really, the heart in this conversation is to demonstrate the work, and even call and invite you into these same conversations. So if you do want to participate in what James and Emma are doing in their world, so that they can do what they are committed to, which is running these two very successful small businesses and transforming their family legacy, let's connect. Like, please reach out, send an email, go to joemalizia.com, check out Instagram or the YouTube channel, whatever, because I would love to be a resource. But I also unapologetically I would love for you to share how people can connect with you if they have questions about, maybe it is coaching, but maybe it's also, hey, you guys are business owners. How can people support you guys and what your mission is and what you're doing for other people? How can people and where can people find you?
Yeah, well, I'm definitely an open book. I'm happy to share all that we've learned with coaching. And yeah, you can send me a DM on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok at Emily Hancock Photo. So, definitely reach out if you have any questions about coaching or owning a business. I don't know all the things, but I could definitely share our experience. Yeah, I love to help other people. So,
Thank you, Em. Seriously. Appreciate you. I love you. I respect the hell out of you. And I'm just so grateful for being able to walk with you and James. Been a blessing in my heart and to my family. And so thank you for being here. All right, Em, to wrap things up, I wanna ask you three rapid fire questions, okay? And so you get to answer these, the first thing that comes to mind, okay? Three
okay.
rapid fire questions. Um, One, favorite movie.
Oh gosh, this is terrible. I don't. All movie names disappeared. Um, I'll say this because I know your distaste for Star Wars. I love all the Star Wars except the last three movies. We don't talk about those.
That's totally fair, because Em and James also know that my son Micah loves Star Wars. So whatever I don't care for, Micah makes up for. So there's that in our house. Em, who is one person that you would like to meet, whether they're dead or alive? Who would you like to meet in person?
Mm. All right, this is gonna sound really weird. I did a book report on her, like in I think it was middle school when I was like really into doing really good with book reports.
Mm.
Amelia Earhart, because she was like
Awesome.
one of the like role models I had growing up. Thought she was so cool.
That's awesome. And last question, favorite cereal.
Mm. Oh, definitely peanut butter Captain Crunch.
Oh, all right. A little bit of captain in you. All right, all right. Well, thanks, my friend, for joining us. Thank you all for being here in this conversation, and we look forward to having more conversations like this. So, subscribe, listen, share this information. Let it be a blessing to you and the people in your life as it is to us. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe.